This is iHeart Communities. I'm your host, Jade Harrell, keeping you connected to our community. As we look for ways to address and curb and try to stop the violence in our community, one pastor has taken it on very directly as well as personally by taking his ministry to the streets. I am joined today by Pastor Kenneth McCoy, who is the senior pastor at Progressive AME Zion Church, co-founder of the Black Methodist Alliance in St. Louis, and also the founder and director of NightLIFE, a violence prevention activity. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Jay.
It is my great pleasure. So, Pastor, tell us a little bit about your ministry and how you came to take things on in this way.
Well, it really grew out of a lot of emotion, but primarily frustration. I had the misfortune of eulogizing a number of young people who were victims of gun violence, two of whom I was very close to and was their pastor. And I just really, upon pronouncing the benediction at both funerals, I felt totally hypocritical and hopeless and helpless and all these things. And so I was compelled to do this just based out of a sense of obligation and my duty and responsibility as a pastor to do more than just speak fancy words over some unfortunate child's dead body.
The words that have become post-mortem.
Exactly.
But how did you know? I mean, my gosh, I think this is something that perplexes us about how and what to do. Now, in your area, tell us a little bit about your area and the young people that are in your congregation.
Well, the young people in my congregation, well, one thing, I'll just have to be transparent here. Yeah. My son was a member of a gang and was shot himself 4 times.
Oh, my Lord.
About 2 years ago. And I had only been walking maybe a month when he'd gotten shot.
Wow, you were walking prior to him being shot.
Right.
And now that's powerful, Pastor, and I've got to ask, we're like, well, here we've got a pastor of a church. How did your son turn to a gang?
Well, nobody ever asked me that question. I'm sure they thought about it, but I appreciate you asking me.
Yeah.
I was not aware that my son was in a gang until he was just totally immersed in it. I thought we had a pretty close relationship because the gang consisted of young people that he went to elementary school with, little kids that I knew all their lives. And I thought I was paying attention, but apparently I was not paying that much attention.
Now, is that so, or is it something we're missing as parents? Because I'm sure we all have a similar concern. We think we know, and we're active, and we talk to our kids. Let me share what I've learned. Please do. I mean, not just for interview's sake, but for our children's sake and our relationships with our young people.
Yes, it's really more about their loyalty to whatever gang or whatever set they're a part of. Most of these kids know who's doing the killing.
Okay.
And I would say 90% of them know who shot who. But because of the rules of the game, so to speak, they're not going to violate those rules. Sometimes it's driven by fear of retaliation. Right. But other times it's just simply driven by, that's just not what we do. We don't snitch.
Exactly. Right.
So it is a culture, a very, very rigid culture that it's very, very difficult to penetrate. Now, I've been able to penetrate it to some extent, having the experiences that I have.
Right.
And, personal and otherwise, by sort of going into the streets and just sort of developing trust and, accruing what you call street cred. By doing what I'm doing.
That makes sense. And I want to go more into that, but I do want to, I don't want to step over some of the, initial things. So it's a culture you talked about. It's also counterculture to what we may have established as a family, for example. How did the gang culture prevail or predominate over the home and family culture, in your opinion?
Yeah, in my opinion, for one thing, you have, I have probably 3 jobs.
Got it. Okay.
If you talk about all the things that, that I do, and then on top of that, I do a lot of volunteering. Mm-hmm. I'm not a mega church pastor, so I'm my church's biggest contributor.
Yeah.
So a lot of times,
I get you. Yeah.
Right. So a lot of parents are just trying to make ends meet. Mm-hmm. And really don't have the luxury or the time. They certainly don't have the luxury of time to do those kinds of. And it turns out to be investigative kind of parenting, where you become an investigator yourself to determine who and what, when, where, and all this kind of stuff. And then as they get older, you want to respect their privacy to some extent. But it's very, very complex, but it's something that can be done. Now, my biggest critique is really with the Christian church.
Okay, now,
not so much with the family.
Speak on it, sir.
Well, I just don't think as a faith community that we're doing enough to address it. I think we're very, very good at avoiding it and pretending that it doesn't happen. It could be due to some class issues. Okay. It could be due to fear, but whatever it is, I think that we have a responsibility to do more. I don't think I'm doing enough, and I risk my life 3 nights a week, but I still don't feel as if I'm doing enough. I don't want to get in too big a hurry as to endanger my life or anybody else's.
Sure.
But I do think that
the collectively would, if there were multiple yous doing this, addressing the issue, like you said, not looking away or avoiding it, would certainly make a tremendous amount of difference. Well, so there was a period of time where you weren't doing something, and then there was something that created an urgency and need to do it. Let's talk, what kept you from it before?
Well, the urgency came in 2000. Well, I always thought I was sort of, I have an affinity for a certain demographic.
Me too.
I really do. People that, society tends to discard or discount in some kind of way. And I've just always had that affinity for that group. Right. And, they don't really train you in school to deal with gun violence and gang violence and things of that nature. So not to make an excuse, for a while I did not know what to do because there is no curriculum that prepares you for that in any seminary, divinity school, Bible school, or anything of that nature.
There is no school for that. There's no school for this. But it exists. Right. And unfortunately, without us actually plugging in like you have, we don't necessarily even know what to do, but we don't even know what we're dealing with.
Well, this was a very, very slow process for me. I mean, I've received death threats and the whole 9 yards, but the key was to continue to do it and build the trust. And certainly this kind of exposure is always helpful so people will understand that I'm not out here, I'm not working against the police, I'm not working for the police either. I'm not trying to get anybody locked up or anything. I'm trying to get to them before the system does. That's sort of, our goal, but it's a very, very protracted kind of process. It happens, but you really have to take baby steps in doing it. So,
well, tell us about the steps. How did you encroach upon your approach?
Well, in 2009, I buried a young man at 17 whom I baptized at 14. And so I knew at that point that, this is just how God deals with me, I believe, that nothing just happens to a believer randomly. I think when you encounter certain experiences, it's a lesson. God is, like they said in The Color Purple, God is trying to tell you something. And that's how I've always sort of viewed those kinds of big events in my life. And it just kept happening. And I knew at that point I had to do something. So what I did at that point, I just tried to walk as close as I could with the young men who were in the sphere of my influence. Okay. But that was not enough. And just in 2015, I had this epiphany that, wow, Christ was in the streets.
Well,
And if he were here, he wouldn't be at the Basilica or at some big Protestant church. He would probably be on the Hodemont tracks. Is my guess, based on everything I've read. And I wanted to do what he did. I didn't want any other parents to ever get a call like I got that my son had been shot 4 times and was at Barnes Hospital.
For sure.
So I was compelled. I don't have a choice. I'm going to do this until this violence stops.
Wow. Now, did your son survive the?
Yes, he did. He did. Yes, he did. He has the lower bone beneath his knee was just exploded when he got hit, and so he has a prosthetic piece there now.
Sure. What does he say now?
He's doing a lot better.
Mindset-wise.
Mindset-wise, it took a lot. Just to be honest with you, he got involved with a young lady, had 2 kids, and now he's thinking about those children now. And I'm constantly reminding them, hey, Junior, those are your kids, man. I'm not taking care of them kids. I'm going to visit them kids, play with them kids, and spend money on them when I want to. But them your kids.
But look how the perspective had shifted, and now that he's the parent. And that's powerful. That's powerful. Now, you talk about trust. It's got to trust both ways. I mean, the first night you went out there, what was it like, and what were you thinking? What happened?
It was horrible.
Tell me what happened.
Oh, my God. It was horrible, and I thought that this is the dumbest thing that you have ever done in your life. Well, really, because, I sort of thought that I understood the streets.
Right.
And when I got out there was just absolutely no trust. We walked this one particular street that was a very, very violent street, even today, and no one would speak to us. And after 1 week we walked, the next week law enforcement came through, did a bunch of busts. People accused us of setting that up. I got death threats. My car got vandalized, and it was really crazy for a while because I didn't really understand what I was walking into. And you really don't
have a better
know.
Understanding now?
Oh, I have a much better. I'm not saying I know everything.
Sure, but an understanding that none of us would have.
Well, I have well.
So what do you know that we don't and need to?
Well, I think that, for one thing, that the night culture is totally different from daytime culture. You have a totally different cast of characters. Whether people are actually desperate or not, I think most of them are desperate. You can't go around asking people what their name is. You can't encroach on people's turf. You essentially have to be invited. Fortunately, by being a member of the clergy and representing the church, there is still considerable respect for that institution in the streets. So that helped a whole lot. But there's really, what we worry about more than anything else is random gunfire, not necessarily anybody targeting us,
sure.
but just sort of being at the wrong place at the wrong time. The other thing is, I know that these are human beings, fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of God. Now, I know that because I've met them, I've talked to them, I've taken them to the hospital, I've gone to court with them. I know them. They're just like anybody else. They're just caught up.
Now,
and I'm not making excuses.
No. And I get that. Now, this came from after you came out into the neighborhood, into the streets, or was this something that you had already in place?
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
Okay.
I mean, it was a year. It took me a year to figure that out.
Knowing who, I know you walked in there with a like you said, an affinity, a love, a compassion, and a grace about the folks that you would have encountered regardless. But then when you say you got to know them, would this be, knowing that they're fearfully and wonderfully made, was that folks you already knew or folks you came to know as things opened up and connections happened?
Oh, I met them in the streets. Okay. I never knew them before. I met, and so when we first,
somebody then by hearing your story, and this is kind of the spoiler of it, spoiler alert, in a good way, is that at some point you weren't so much foreign, untrusted threat. People opened up and communicated, connected with you.
Right, they did. And the other thing, once we got out there, I had no idea there was so much homelessness in residential areas of our city.
I got it.
And we feed probably 60 to 100 people in the summertime a night. Mm-hmm. So once we got out there and discovered these needs, we did our best to try to meet them. We would make little bag lunches and take them out there. And I'm telling you, we're really grateful for that.
Absolutely, because access creates some of that agitation.
Right, and we had a friend who was a professor at Harris Stowe, Professor Dr. Ronaldo Anderson, who walked with us earlier on. We've sent young people to him. We have a relationship with Rankin Tech. We've referred a few people over there. So we do what we can.
Outcome. Right, you do what you can.
We do what we can. But really,
that's a huge contribution and an incredible light to shine in literally dark places.
Well, thank you for saying so, but I think it's what I'm supposed to do anyway.
You have a motto that says, "We love our people more than we fear them." Now, I don't know who wouldn't be frightened stepping out into the night streets. But speak about your motto with that, and why it takes loving them more than fearing what basically are symptoms of their circumstance, as opposed to the soul of who they are.
Well, when I go out there, I see people that look like my nieces, nephews, brothers, sisters, cousins, and it's really not logical for me to fear them. And that doesn't mean that I'm just out there recklessly. Some nights, somebody will approach us on the lot and say, "Hey, Rev, don't go down such and such street tonight." Okay. And I won't. Right. Well, I have, but most of the time I don't. Most of the time I don't. Right. It just depends. Like if God is talking to me one way and they're saying something different, it's something I just have to weigh. But most of the time I take their advice because, again, it's their turf. So I also discovered, I had no idea there was so much abuse out there. As far as there are a lot of women in those streets. Yeah. And their abuse is such that they are numb to it. And so there are a number of things we're working on right now. Okay.
You want to tell me a few of the initiatives?
Well, it's just some legislative stuff that we're looking at, too, the folk I'm talking to about it asked me not to say anything about it.
No worries.
Shut my mouth off to Jade Harrell now, but I don't know that I can give any. I can't give the details. But we are.
That's what I'm looking for. Is how can we help, Pastor? How can we help?
Well, I mean, for one thing, I don't use high pressure sales tactics to recruit people.
Nah, just get real with it.
This has to be a calling. You have to feel like you're supposed to do this, because I have white Episcopal priests who walk with me. I've had black nationalists walk with me. I've had a young man come all the way up from Spring Hill, Kansas, on the prairie. He'll drive up here periodically just to walk with us, but they feel compelled to do that. Yeah. So I don't just cast the net, but if people feel compelled to do it, they're more than welcome to call me, and we take them through a little training. But we'll take donations, because we're pretty much we fund our own work. Like we probably spend about $200 a week on food. Okay, right. And
would some of that be resolved or relieved by connecting with some other agencies?
Oh my God, yes. Okay. Somebody that would give us some bread or whatever.
Well, shoot, I've had a few interviews just this month with organizations that have food. And so
that would be really helpful.
I think you guys just need to know each other. But this is why this works, is because we're communicating about what we're doing and what the needs are and what our heart is.
Right.
Let me ask, when you walk, so what does walking do? What are you doing out there when you walk? Take me through it.
We call it a ministry of presence.
All right.
Just sort of being at the right place at the right time. Before we go out, we pray. And everybody doesn't stand in a circle and pray. Some people, don't believe the way we believe, and that's fine. But anybody that's willing to, risk their life and walk with us is a friend. So I don't I don't have those kinds of issues. So, and I don't try to preach to people. Just you look at what I'm doing, and if what I'm doing is inspiring to you enough to participate, that's enough witness to me. I don't feel like I have to do a lot of talking.
Right.
But we literally chose some of the some of the most dangerous streets we could find, and that was the whole point. And we walk right down the center of the street. We wear reflective vests, and we walk right down the center of the street, where people cannot mistake us
for something else. Yeah,
right. And the people we know, we speak to. The people that we don't know, we leave it up to them if they want to speak. And a lot of times people will ask us, Pastor, will you pray for us? There was a young man not too long ago whose girlfriend broke up with him. He was an addict and a banger and everything, and he had a gun, and he was all amped up on something. And I had to sit with this guy at 2:30 in the morning. Wow. He threatened to shoot.
And in your conversation with him, what did you walk away? What's the knowing or conclusion you walked away with?
That had I not known him, because he was hurting, he cried out to me. He asked for me.
Wow.
And
I not taken... met you before?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, got it. But he was ready to shoot.
Right, he was. Well, he was nervous that the other two, one pastor and another gentleman that was with us, they had walked away and they were whispering, and he thought they were talking about calling the police.
Oh,
and so he decided he was going to shoot them, and he offered to shoot me in the leg.
So I thought, I'm like,
how
kind.
Not doing me no favor, man. Shoot me in my leg.
But you stayed with them. You were there, like you said, at the right time for him in his life, and was able to de-escalate.
Right, exactly. And there is, and I just really believe that religious leaders are just uniquely qualified to do that. Absolutely. Because a lot of times when lay folk go out, it's difficult to distinguish them from somebody trying to encroach on somebody's territory or something like that.
Yeah, I got it.
So you have to be clearly identified. And so we wear clergy collars when we go out, and the whole 9 yards. Yeah. And just to be honest with you, Jade, I prefer doing this over being in a pulpit.
Tell me why.
Well, I'm doing what I believe Christ would do, and it's hands on. I see the hopelessness and the despair, and it challenges me. It pushes me. It encourages me. Yeah. It breaks my heart all the time.
Of course,
I'm in just constant state of brokenness, which is a good place to be if you're a believer. You never get to the place where you feel like you have arrived. Yeah. And you never feel like you're better than anybody. I think the church has all kinds of class issues where we have embraced a certain elitism that God is going to... And I really think that because of our lack of engagement as a body of believers, we've given the enemy permission to just take our communities, and that's unacceptable to me. Yeah. I live here. Yeah. This is just unacceptable.
And we all do. You use a quote from Sam Moore, the 4th Ward alderman, who said that his area has 150 churches, but also has the highest homicide rate in the city.
That's right.
We live here, and we congregate here.
Right.
And there is no reason for that number to be number one with that much possible potential influence like your own. It may be in a completely different mode, but there is opportunity there. And you mentioned violence interruption. Tell me why interruption was your choice of description there.
Well, because that's what we want to do. Okay. I want it to be as descriptive as we could. Our prayer is that we don't encounter violence. That's what we pray.
Cessation, yes.
Right, but
for now...
Right, we'll have to just deal with it.
Yeah,
and right. And
that's a life save. There's a life save. There's times when?
There are times where we've had to, few times where we've had to dodge a few bullets.
Wow, okay.
And, but we met with, at the time, Chief Dotson was the chief, and there was a young lady, Lieutenant Bostruck, who sort of gave us some training and whatnot, what to do and all this kind of thing.
Perfect.
And
you haven't encountered any loss or injuries?
Oh, no, not at all.
Well, look at that.
Well, I mean, catching a cramp running one night, but you can call that injury.
That's the extent of it, and what you could claim as the most dangerous areas in our community, that speaks volumes to what you're doing, and I think it's evidence that it's working. So, my prayers are with you too, brother, and I plead His blood over you and your work.
Yep. Thank you so much. We would not do this were people not praying for us.
Absolutely, and that's the truth. You're setting a fine, beautiful example, and I'm so glad I had the opportunity to learn more about it here today. Give us information how folks can learn more and get connected.
Sure. We have a Facebook page called NightLIFE, or you can go to our church page, Progressive AME Zion Church, or you can just give me a call, direct area code 314-766-9143.
Excellent. Pastor McCoy, I'm so grateful for your time today and look forward to spending more time learning more and coming up with great additional ways to support what you're doing and also join in the cause.
Thank you so much, Jay.
I appreciate it. Pastor Kenneth McCoy, Senior Pastor at Progressive AME Zion Church, the co-founder of the Black Methodist Alliance in St. Louis, and founder and director of the NightLIFE Initiative. All right, that's it for this week. If you have questions or comments or have something you'd like to include in the community calendar, you can leave a message on our message box at 314-333-8369, 314-333-8369. And for more information about our show or any of our guests, you can visit us online and listen to the podcasts at Spreaker.com. That's Spreaker.com. And search Community Connection with Jade Harrell. You all be blessed, do blessed, and take care.